Okay, so here are the three topics I'll be covering. The first is, what is ISO New England? And second is, how is electricity sold and priced? And the third is about the grid and reliability, with Vermont Yankee as an example. However, I want you to know that as I was talking to people about the grid and reliability, because it's not easy to figure some of these things out, and I was talking a lot to Dave Lamont of the Vermont Department of Public Service. He said similar grid problems are possible because of the clean energy plant blowing up. So that it isn't just like this is a unique problem if Vermont Yankee closes down. Now let me first say, what is ISO? Because Mark asked me the other day, he said, ISO, isn't that like a standards for how you run your business, ISO 9000? And I said, that's true. But this means something different. This is independent system operator. In the old days, when the utilities owned both the power plants and the transmission lines and the distribution and everything, they had their own dispatch centers. Nowadays, because many plants are owned by many different entities, and there's one entity that's pretty much in charge of the pooled big transmission line, and then other entities of the distribution system, there is a central unit called the independent system operator that manages all of the dispatch. Okay, the role of ISO New England. This is the ISO New England main page, and it shows that ISO New England runs the electricity markets for all of New England. Prices are set every 5 minutes real time. So every 5 minutes, the price of electricity changes. It's all done with computers. The ISO also runs forward markets. The most important one usually is the day-ahead market, because that's where things like a power plant is going down or a transmission line is going out might be factored into it. But it also runs years-ahead markets. That is, will we have enough power for a couple of years from now? Now, if I move this correctly. Now, where does ISO get its money? That's always an interesting question. You know, they will follow the money statement. ISO has tariffs for different services. And I read all of this and I said, you know, you can't figure this out. So I called up David Lamont and he said, well, they have various tariffs, but most of the funding is based on the fees paid to it by the pooled transmission lines. That means the big transmission lines that really carry interstate electricity. All ISO members contribute to the pooled transmission line funding according to their percentage of the grid, what load they have. So ISO Vermont pays 4% if a pooled transmission line, a new one, were to be constructed in Vermont tomorrow. Vermont would pay 4% of the cost. If it would be constructed in Massachusetts tomorrow, Vermont would pay 4% of the cost. And about $750 million worth of transactions take place per year on pooled transmission lines, and ISO budget is $125 million.
When you say Vermont, does that mean the utilities in Vermont?
The utilities in Vermont, yes. Not the. Okay, so here's some key facts from one of the ISO websites. 6.5 million households, 14 million people, 30,000 megawatts of generating capacity, 8,000 miles of transmission lines. Dave Lamont was kind of concerned with me putting this 350 generators up. He wanted me to point out that only generators of above about 5 megawatts are counted. So if you've got a rooftop system, it's not in that. There's actually a lot more generators. And 13 interconnections to power systems in other states. Okay, well, it's staying. Okay, this is a map of ISO, and this is a map taken at a certain time, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see everything I want to tell you about this map, but there it is. This is the hub, and in general, you talk about pricing at the hub. There's a thing up there that says, this is at one moment in time. One moment in time, this is what we have here, is that At this moment, when I took this picture off the web, Vermont was at 5.5 cents per kilowatt at wholesale. New Hampshire was 5.3 cents. Northern, this part of Massachusetts was 5.4 cents. This part of Massachusetts was 5.3 cents. Another thing that Dave mentioned to me is that there's a kind of chronic imbalance because there's not enough lines running west, and so prices in the western part of the ISO area tend to be a little higher than prices in the east. Another thing you might notice, we may get back to it later, I don't know if it's, you see that thing that says Highgate. Most of our electricity from Canada comes in on the Highgate line. And if you notice that it says it's at $49, but then Vermont is at $55. And one of the reasons for that, and we could get completely lost in the weeds with this, but it's important to remember that the transmission lines charge a significant amount of money because of line loss and so forth. I mean, they don't charge the money so much as they lose power because it's shipped a long way, and then so it may be 49 cents when it's shipped to Canada, but it's 55 cents when it arrives here because less arrives, okay? And as I say, then there's these congestion charges, at which point I was truly getting lost in the weeds. But you can be charged more than the line losses if it's a congested line, okay? So here we go. Let's see what the next one says. Okay, I missed some. I missed it. Something is not here. I want to show. Here it is. This is the one. How electricity is sold. Okay. I didn't lose it. There's electricity sold three ways. There can be a contract, there can be regulation, and there can be spot price. And this price ticker, I just took a snapshot of it off the ISO thing. It's updated constantly. It just keeps circling through. It's updated, updated, updated for all the different areas. In this case, I just wanted to point out that this is power coming into the ISO area from New Brunswick, and the loss compensation, remember I was telling you about the line losses have to be dealt with somehow. If you notice, it's 10% approximately. Well, it's a little less. It's $6 compared to $6.50, but it's significant, and it keeps happening. So when people begin talking to you about, oh, we're going to bring in wind power from the Great Plains, we can't even bring in stuff from New Brunswick very well, in my opinion. But anyway, that's more on that. Now let's see if I can get more. So we're going to talk first about selling by contract or by regulation, because the spot price is a little harder to explain. As a matter of fact, it's really hard to explain. But we're going after it. A contract. Vermont Yankee has a memorandum of understanding in place right now with the Vermont utilities, which means that Vermont Yankee sells at 4.2 cents per kilowatt hour to certain Vermont utilities. It doesn't matter what the spot price on. All that colorful stuff about, you know, when it's between 40 and 70, and it's the light green color, and all that stuff you saw before. Well, let me see if I can show it to you again. There's this color key here. This color key says, well, you know, it's in the green area here, which means that the price is down between 4 and 7 cents per kilowatt hour at wholesale. And it can go up to the orange area, you know, orange alert, where it's 20 cents per kilowatt hour during a hot day and so forth and so on. All that stuff doesn't matter to Vermont Yankee when it's selling to the utilities, local utilities. It gets 4.2 cents per kilowatt hour. That's what it gets.